when I woke up, very confused. She said, "You almost died last night. In fact, no one can believe you were alive."
I went into the games not knowing what was coming.
As humans, we just hate uncertainty.
You just sensed that it was out there.
You have to start somewhere.
We're all programmed to push ourselves even farther.
This is On the X, an IRONCLAD original. Welcome to On the X. My guest today is Dan Martell, entrepreneur, investor, coach, and author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Buyback Your Time. Dan's story is anything but ordinary. After a troubled start that included juvenile detention and rehab, he discovered coding at 17 and never looked back. He went on to build and exit 3 tech companies, invest in more than 50 startups like Intercom and Udemy, and launched SaaS Academy, one of the world's top coaching platforms for SaaS founders. Today, Dan runs Martell Ventures and leads King's Club, a mentorship community helping young men build purpose-driven lives. His work centers around a powerful question: how do you scale a business without sacrificing your life? We'll get into that and more in this conversation. So here we go with Dan Martell on the X. Your book is interesting. Like it's very clear to me that you are like a coder, because everything in it is so structured of like, here's the system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here are the acronyms that go along with it, which is right in like my wheelhouse. That's the kind of stuff that I like, right? I write emails where it's like, number 1, this, number 2, this. And so that piece of it really spoke to me. But let's kind of wind the clock back for people that don't know anything about you. This book starts with like not a story I would anticipate would be at the beginning of a book like this, where this is kind of prescriptive nonfiction here that's about business. And your first thing is like running away from the cops, basically. So talk a little bit about that. Like you started off as kind of like a juvenile delinquent who was in jail. That is the beginning of your story.
Delinquent plus. It's it is wild to reflect on it. And but yeah, as a teenager, man, I was wild. I got actually taken out of my home when I was 12 because my parents couldn't have me there. And honestly, it wasn't safe. Like back then I had a severe anger issue, said and did things I'm definitely ashamed of and not proud of, and ended up getting put into initially crisis center because of some of the threats I'd made. And then they released me to foster care. So I had a foster dad named Dave. I was his first and last foster kid. So I can tell you about that experience for him. Eventually I got put into a group home with kids that I was 12 when I went in there. So I only lasted maybe 4 or 5 months with the foster parent. And just like that was when I got introduced to drugs and just became an addict. And man, I struggled. I struggled from pretty much 11. I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11 to 17. And my life changed when I found myself in an adult prison, even though I was 16 at the time, because of the severity of my crimes. They had a youth section, but it was a full-on cell block and, cells, and there was, 90% of the population of this facility was adults. I had a guard pull me aside after I got in a big fight and thrown in the hole, which is solitary confinement, and just look me in the eyes and just speak belief into me when I felt like I didn't even deserve the air I was breathing.
Well, yeah, you talk about this, but what was it about? I mean, do you think about that moment as like like this person as being a pivotal person in your life? Because it seems to me that conversation, at least the way you write about it in here, was really pivotal. And I wonder what it was.
It was everything. It was, I'll tell you what made it so impactful. It was, his name was Brian. And at this point I might've been there for 5 or 6 months. And I got in a fight when he wasn't even working that day. But Brian was the kind of guard where if you respected him, he would look the other way if you're doing, something minor, right? Like trying to sneak an extra dessert or, stay up later. Like he was just, you respected him. He respected you. It was kind of this unsaid code. And so I obviously looked up to him. And when he came, he actually is I was in the hole for 3 days straight, 23.5-hour lockdown in my underwear, only let out into this walled cage thing to get some natural sunlight. But I mean, it was only 10 by 10. It wasn't very big. And, when the door opened and he's standing there and he's shaking his head in disappointment and he says, here's your clothes, come with me. I thought I was in trouble. And we were walking back to the cell block. And as we're walking back, we go past the door. Like, you understand, I've been here for 6 months. We go out to go to the gym, go to the mess hall. But we never went past that door. The next door was the guard unit, and it overlooked both of the youth cell blocks that had set up in this adult prison. And he opens the door and he says, essentially, go ahead. And I was like, I didn't know if it was a test. I thought, because he's not my caseworker, I've never seen anybody. And then if you go there, you'll essentially get arrested because, that's where they put all the staff, personal items and is the inside of the one-way mirror in our cell block. So he brings me in there. It's just him and I, and he sits me down and he pulls a chair in front of me and looks me in the eyes and just says, "You don't belong here." And I said, "I don't understand." He goes, "I've been watching you do your schoolwork, staying out of trouble. You tried not to get involved in the rest of the kind of the prison issues. And I've been here for 10 years and I've seen a lot of kids come and go, and you just don't belong here. It makes no sense to me." And it broke me inside.
Yeah.
Because at first I wanted to deny it. But then at the same time, I'm like, this guy could get fired for even having me in here. He has no reason to tell me this. Why would he bother? And it didn't change me overnight by any means, but it definitely planted a seed that maybe there was something, maybe there was something there that I just didn't see or other people didn't see. And maybe other people had said it to me, but inside my head, I just thought, maybe he's right. And that was all I needed. I just needed one person to look me in the eyes to tell me that he believed in me. And that started me down a completely different path. So yeah, pivotal, understatement of understatements. Yeah.
And then, and how old were you? 16, 17?
I was 16, turning 17, yeah.
And then was it a coding book that you found?
Yeah. God, I'm a person of faith, so I look back now and I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But at the time, it made no sense. Yeah, I got released probably a month later because of what Brian said. I kind of just I went back to doing my homework and staying out of things. And I got released to finish my sentence. I got sentenced to about 18 months. So I got released to go finish my sentence in a therapeutic community facility called Portage. And, for specific youth, drug addiction, it's on premise, middle of nowhere. Cause, kids run away. They're walking back cause they're not going to get anything. They're not going to get very far. Yeah. And, most kids do 6 months. I did 11 months. I had a lot of demons to work on. I had a lot of challenges to overcome. I had a lot of anger towards my parents. I had a lot of blame against the world. I had a lot of self-worth that wasn't there. And, it wasn't easy. I almost got kicked out twice. But what was crazy is after rebuilding the identity, right? From Dan, who always gets in trouble, to Dan, who's got some value to bring to the world. I was helping Rick, the maintenance guy, clean out these old camps on property. It was built in an old church camp. And there was these 3 buildings that we never went in, and we were just kind of opening doors. So I ended up staying after I got released officially. I asked if I could stay and work with Rick because Rick was like a big brother to me, even though he was probably 20 years older than me at the time. Maybe like a dad figure, but he acted more like a big brother. He was just didn't talk a whole lot, but, could fix anything. And he was very busy because, as you can imagine, a lot of feelings caused a lot of damage. And so yeah, I was just helping them clean out one of these camps, and in one of the rooms was this table with a old 486 computer, you know, for those old enough to remember, and next to it, this yellow book on Java programming. And I'd never touched a computer my whole life. We didn't have one. And I opened up this book and I started reading it, thinking it was going to read like, you know, hexadecimals or hieroglyphics. Like, and it just read like English. If anybody's ever looked at Java as a programming language, and I just sat down and I followed the instructions of chapter 1 for 20 minutes. I'm tapping, just literally just copy and pasting what it wrote and following the instructions. And then I hit enter, and on the screen it says "Hello World."
Right.
And that created a new obsession that became my new addiction, that, you know, became a passion that to this day I still code.
What was it about it though that lit you up? And by the way, I love the juxtaposition of like what's going on in your personal life with the hello world. Like that's a really kind of, I don't know.
And if anybody's ever read a computer book, the first chapter is Hello World.
Right. Right. The point is, it could be, you could have a whole bunch of computer science students or whatever sitting in a classroom doing that, and it means nothing. Like you got 20 students who are all, and it says Hello World on every single computer screen. But for you in your circumstance, I think that just takes on a completely different meaning and has a lot more relevance to the scenario going on. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, when I reflected upon it, because obviously that was also a pretty important moment in my life that changed everything. I think what I fell in love with was the predictability of writing code. See, I grew up in so much chaos, uncertainty, that I remember when I wrote the first app and I just, you know, you tell it to execute and it just runs. And it was kind of an interesting kind of mental rewiring where I was like, oh, for the first time in my life, if I write the code and the computer has power, it will always do this thing that I asked it to do. I don't have to worry if it was up late last night. I don't have to worry if it was drunk or high. I don't have to worry. There's all this, like, I grew up in so much uncertainty. I was just always, it was almost like my whole life I was bracing myself. Mm-hmm. And now from this chaotic upbringing, there's this calm and consistent and repeatability to it that's what I fell in love with. I fell in love with that when I was building on a foundation that just did what I asked it to do. And it was the first time in my life that I think I felt that level of maybe control. I don't know, but I was doing therapy when I was writing code. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it at the time. It took years later to reflect and go, oh, I was like meditating. I was in deep flow. I was addicted to the creation, and it turned out that muscle is incredibly powerful in this world, you know, and I get young men all the time asking me like, how do I figure my version of that out? And I don't have an answer on how to find it. I'm just saying, if you ever feel it, just allow yourself to be obsessed. Like I'm lucky. When I remember talking to my dad about it, and I had two passions. I had one in botany, because I was into plants, you know, I was growing weed. I was a bit of a farmer. And the other one was computers. And my dad said, you know, you can always have a garden as a hobby, but I really think you should go all in on this computer thing. This is 1997, so right at the beginning of the internet. And that's what happened. I allowed myself to be addicted to writing code. I would stay up. I had to go back and finish high school. So I had one more year to finish, and I would stay up. I would hardly go to class. Like I would go, but I didn't care. And I would just allow myself to stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning and get up in the morning, go to school on weekends. And I just built stuff, you know, no different than a woodworker would tinker in his wood shop. Like I just built things for myself, built things for my friends, played around with the internet. That changed everything. And today I run a multi-$100 million empire in the software space. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about the flow state there, and that is it, right? That is why You talk about ADHD too. It's like the cure for a lot of that stuff is find something that really, I mean, you talk about it in here in your book, but find something that really fires you up that you just get lost in. And it's like, it's impossible to be distracted at that point because you're so interested in what you're doing, you know? And you use the term addicted too. I often think about the fact that the difference between an addiction and a passion is pretty much just whether it's harmful or helpful for you, right?
100% it. When I see a person that's homeless on the street, I go, the difference between them and I is like this much. It's not, I have a positive adaptation to the, the pain, and they just have a negative one that just harms their life more than mine. So I'm very aware of how lucky and rare, but it was an addiction back then because I allowed myself to, I mean, in many ways, that is a way to replace a bad habit, is to find a better positive habit. And that's all I did. I went from, taking substances to not feel the world to, writing code that allowed me to create a world. And it was a very therapeutic process for me.
How'd that then translate though? Because you mentioned you then went on and did super successful in business, hundreds of millions of dollars in these companies and various companies you're involved in and invested in. And, but that's a separate skill in and of itself. I mean, you can be a great coder, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a great entrepreneur.
Zero. No, I mean, I struggled for almost a decade. I mean, people see me today and I'm 45 and and I've been fairly wealthy since I was in my late 20s. And, when, the older you get, the less impressive it is, which is what it is. But like when I was younger,
yeah, that's true.
They'd be like, wow, that's so impressive. But I went from 17 to 26, so 9 years. And when I say like heads down working, I didn't do anything else. All I did was write code. All I did was try to start companies. All I did was, just try to figure out if there was a place for me to play in this world. And my goal was just make $100,000 a year. Like it wasn't even that ambitious, Yeah. So how did I get there? Through literal failure and getting back up. I had a few advantages that on reflection, I got lucky. One of them was that nobody in my family had any expectations for me, which sounds kind of sad, but at the same time, knowing how much pressure kids are under today to perform for their family, I feel like I had the best gift in the world, that I couldn't mess up as long as I didn't relapse. And that was it. I just, like, when I got out, all I said is stay sober, stay sober, stay sober. Like, got to get rid of these friends, got to not do this, got to, so I was hyper allergic to anything that felt like it was going to cause that. And then even though I was trying in business, like I always ask people, there's like the businesses you start that fail. Those are like corporations that you have like legit bank accounts and all that stuff. And then there's like domains you buy, projects you start that just fizzle off. I probably went through 20 some projects, 2 meaningful companies, till I finally 9 years later started a company, hired a business coach, and started to understand the business side of the software stuff I was doing. Because prior to that, I was just a software guy trying to play business. And it was funny because the way I got good at software is I taught myself. Like my dad did this really cool thing. Once I kind of talked to him about my passion, he said, as long as you finish the book, I will always buy you a book, the next book, whatever you want to do. You just got to finish it. So, the local bookstore had a couple, rows of computer and database and internet type books. And to his credit, I mean, he must have spent, now that I know what the cost of books are, I mean, probably $3,000 or $4,000 of money that really he didn't have to support me to learn. Now, what's crazy is I did that for several years. Just kept reading books, digesting books, studying books. That's how I taught myself how to do all this. It never occurred to me for 6 or 7 years to actually read a business book, which is kind of dumb. So that's why, like, when people go like, you're so impressive, I go, I'm not that impressive. If anything, I taught myself the ability to unlearn and relearn. And that I know, because I consciously do it every day. Like I literally go, what do I believe that I don't know I believe that's stopping me from achieving the next level I want to achieve? Because if I did believe the thing I needed to believe to be successful, I'd be successful. The fact that the thing I want to achieve is not in my life is just proof that I don't have the right belief set or mindset or, you know, discipline or habit. Like there's something missing, because if I had it, it would be there, because everything in my life is a byproduct of that. And I can look back and go, oh, I used to believe this, that held me back here. I used to believe this is, and so, you know, I've just gotten really good at unlearning and relearning.
That's great. I love that. Talk about unlearning, what that looks like for you too, because that's a great concept that doesn't get talked about often.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing that everybody's going to have to be able to do with this new advent of artificial intelligence. Because that's where I spend all my time. I just like literally spend 90% of my time talking with the smartest AI engineers and building AI software. Like I'm not surprised at all. Yeah, that's just my world because of the software background and kind of Martell Ventures. The unlearning part is, first off, realizing that we are a byproduct of our history, and that our history does not have to define our future. And the only way, I'll give you a good example. This morning I was on TikTok and I was scrolling, and I saw this new series around couples, this therapist, okay?
Okay.
And it's wild. It was so wild, I thought it was fake, and I sent it to my wife, because these two people are on a couch and they're talking about their life and their marriage, and it's just, she's barking at him and he's mellow, but then he says this and the therapist is saying this, and I'm just like, made me feel like the best husband in the world watching these two people interact. And my wife says this, she goes, you know, it's crazy that she can see it from outside, that the challenge is that those people don't understand what drives their emotions, and they're just responding to the environment. And if they could create some perspective to understand that their life is a byproduct of their emotional response to a situation that has nothing to do with the situation, right? Because they're going, it's your fault.
Yep.
You make me feel like that sentence is dangerous. You make me feel, nobody makes you feel anything. I mean, right off the bat, how about we just, you know, get behind that idea? Nobody makes me feel anything. I could be in the exact same scenario, same experience, and decide what I want to focus on. And I have two different emotional responses to, you know, any environment. And that's, to me, that's the big idea behind unlearning, is really auditing your psychological biases, right? I always tell my team, strong opinions loosely held. I have an opinion. Dan Martell has an opinion. You go watch my social media content, you will be like, man, this guy's very opinionated. In the same breath, Chris, if you shared me some new data, new information, I'm super open to being completely wrong. And my wife always jokes, because I'd be like, well, why did you do that? You know better. She goes, new information. Because I say that to her all the time, right? New information. I was like, well, that's fair. Because that's the muscle to develop is, you know, it doesn't mean, well, if my experience I don't really control, or if it's, you know, what's the purpose? No, you got to go through life and experience. And I always say the world will show you where you're not free. Wherever you have friction in your life, it is proof that you're not free in that area. And it is actually unique to you, just like your fingerprint. And it is, I think, what I call like a divine assignment or a soul contract. Like, it's the work you are here to do. And that's why, like, I work with a lot of coaches like yourself, and I help them understand the business side of their life. Mm-hmm. And like, when they tell me about what they went through and what they learned and why they're so passionate about serving people at the level that they are today, there's zero, they're like, you know, this might surprise you. Zero surprises me, because I actually think every human is here to do that.
Yep.
Isn't that like a neat idea to think about? Like, where you suffer the most is actually the work that you are asked to do, if you're open to it, to then help resolve and heal that, and then go help other people either avoid and or get through that pain faster. And that is the human experience. And that's what parents sometimes, if they're awake to it, will do for their kids. If they're even more emotionally mature, they'll help their team members or their coworkers or their community, or, you know, it's social media of the world. But that's the whole part of unlearning, is just knowing that you don't know. Like, it's such a weird idea for people. And Carol Dweck wrote the great book about growth mindset where she really gives the science behind this. But our psychology, our IQ, our habits, even when people are like, I'm an introvert, I'm like, I was an introvert and I'm an extreme extrovert today. So so now what? I used to sit at home by myself and code, and I love computers, so I didn't have to talk to somebody. And now you can't get me off of a phone call and interaction with a person. Like, I love people. I love talking. So we have to be very careful with labels.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
the I am very dangerous. So that's like the unlearning part that I think if you can just get to a place where you are open to that, then it's like, okay, well, what part should I focus on unlearning that's going to give me the biggest gain in experiencing a more powerful, joyful, graceful life? And that's kind of what I wake up every day to try to figure out.
Yeah. There's a lot, man. There's so much I could go down a rabbit hole with you on that whole, everything you're talking about in terms of what I refer to as mental fitness is like totally my jam from a kind of personal perspective and a side project that I work on. And yeah, to the last point you make there, one of the things I'm very fond of saying often is there's no just the way you are, there's just the way you've become, right? People say, that's just the way I am. It's like, no, there's no just the way you are. Like the way you are is I'm 5'8". That's just the way I am. Like without surgery, I'm not doing anything. But how I act, the way I view the world, to your point, your beliefs, all of that stuff is malleable. And I just think it's such a critical mindset to have, to your point, like the Carol Dweck stuff. So On the X is brought to you by Mechanix Wear. Mechanix Wear gloves are kind of the go-to glove, I think, for most people out there, whether it's working around the house or on the job or some kind of tactical setting. That's certainly been the case for me throughout my life. And they've made a whole bunch of improvements to the gloves that they have out there. So they've got the kind of original series here with the Velcro backing, Velcro close that most people can use in sort of everyday settings, very ubiquitous for various things that you might want to do. Then they've got these fast fit ones, which you essentially just slide on. There's a little loop there around the wrist where you can pull them on. And then they've got the Impact series, which has a reinforced backing to protect your knuckles. And then they've got this lock ring reinforcement around the thumb now, where there's a lot of wear and tear. There's a whole bunch of other improvements to these. And if you go to their website, they literally have a 5 to 7 minute video about each one of these sets of gloves and all the improvements they've made, from the material, reducing the seams, making them more reinforced, making them more moisture wicking. It's clear that they put a lot of care and attention into their gloves. And if you listen to the guy talk on the website, they really love gloves. And I think that that comes out in everything they do. When I'm going out to a hardware store and I'm looking for some gloves, I almost look at everything else as just kind of a cheap knockoff. So definitely my go-to glove, highly recommended. Mechanix Wear gloves, they're available at most retailers on mechanixwear.com and GSA Advantage, and they're proud to offer an exclusive 15% off discount through the ID.me program to military veterans and first responders. So check them out. So I could talk for 3 hours on that, but let's talk about your book, because like that's that's the breadwinner for you. And it's interesting because it's a business book. It's for kind of entrepreneurs, but it's different in the sense that it's not really about, like, there's a lot of business books out there, like how to grow a business and how to make $1 million and that kind of thing. I've read lots of those books. Your book is sort of about how you free yourself up to then scale things, but then scale yourself as well. It's really about, I mean, that's what it's about. Buy back your time, right? Like people, entrepreneurs, and I've seen this personally, get mired in the minutia of their organizations, and they feel like they can't give the reins to people, and that ultimately slows them down. The fact that they just can't get out of that stuff. So first of all, why did you want to write this specifically? What was it about that topic that you wanted to write about?
I mean, as you can probably guess, Chris, just in even the few minutes we've been talking, I've got a lot of, there's a lot of things I could write about. Sure. I mean, software in AI and the mindset side and the leadership side, but the way I write and decide what content I put out is I just ask myself, of the people that I love the most, what is the thing that I feel I can serve them with the most? And when I looked at, my best friends and my coworkers and my wife and my brothers and, family members, and I realized the through line for all of them was that they just looked at their time through the wrong lens, and they inadvertently, because of that, were building a business that I knew they were going to grow to hate. And I think the biggest loss to the world is an entrepreneur that doesn't want to create anymore, because in more creation is massive pain.
Right.
And I know that was true for me. I mean, I went through it in my mid-20s building my first successful company because I didn't know any better. I just had one gear, which is get things done. Just work 100 weeks, put your head down, don't complain, be grateful for your problems. And, I came out of that a multimillionaire. Cool. It also cost me my relationship. It cost me my health. It cost me my mental health. It cost me my relationship with my families. And I justified it all through the lens of, I guess this is what you have to sacrifice to be successful. Right. It was so painful of a realization, because I remember the morning after the wire transfer came in, and I had negotiated essentially a 0-day earnout with 6 months of it. I stayed on as an advisor. But technically the morning, like the Friday announcement, the weekend, the wire transfers, the Monday rolls around. And that was the first time in my life in quite a long time where if I just laid in bed, nobody cared. I had no purpose. I had no calling. I had no need. It was the wildest thing to sit there thinking, the thing I've been wanting my whole life, I finally got, to realize that I've never felt lonelier, directionless, sad. My fiance at the time left me. My brother was pissed at me. I felt super unhealthy. It was a wild realization, and it was I went down such a friggin' hole that I literally had to go see a therapist, and because I was having anxiety attacks.
Yeah, sure.
And I didn't know why, and I was such a positive mental attitude, and and here I was feeling like there was elephants sitting on my chest, having these attacks. And I went and saw this therapist. His name was Manuel. He had this funny accent, and he just tells me, I'm not gonna try to do his accent, but he just tells me, he goes, I want you to get a rock, put it in your pocket, and I want you to squeeze it when you feel the anxiety. And I'm just like, you're so dumb. Like, this is so dumb. And it turned out it was really helpful. So I walked around with a rock in my pocket, squeezing it. He did give me some advice I thought was pretty awesome. He said, water is healing. You should get a boat. I was like, say less. So as a 28-year-old, I bought myself a really cool boat, and I spent most of my summer on the ocean. But it didn't change the fact that experience of 4 years of going heads down 100 hours a week and burning relationships in my business and my personal life scared me from considering even doing it again. And that's what happened is I thought I probably shouldn't be in a relationship because I don't know how to do that. I don't want to hurt anybody as bad as I hurt my previous fiance. I don't want to hurt ever again like that. It was soul crushing. And maybe I just got to resolve that I'll just be the cool, rich uncle and, really love on my nieces and nephews. And that's probably my future. And I decided to move to Silicon Valley, to the heart of technology from Canada. And it was there that I learned the principles that I really dig in the book on, right? The idea of the buyback loop and the replacement ladder and the drip matrix. And because I watched these 22-year-old kids raise $100 million and build these massive companies. And I was just like, how are they doing this? They have a completely different lens on business building, right? And in many ways, it's ignorance. Nobody ever exposed them to a different way. And there's this culture of just leverage, right? And that's why I felt called to write this book specifically. And I didn't think it would do well. That's the crazy part, Chris. When I wrote it, I asked my publisher, I was like, how many copies would you be happy with when I launch? And he's like, 4,000 would be really awesome. We did almost 20,000 in the first week.
Great. Awesome.
It's bananas. I think we're almost at 1 million copies.
Really? Whoa. Nice.
Oh, it's going.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got copies.
One
It's
of
been
them is sitting right
translated.
here. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's so crazy that, but again, I listen to my heart, and God's the one that said, he's like, this is the book. Don't write the other books. And I could write 30 books, you know, and that was some great advice I got from somebody is, you know, just honor the fact that you may feel called to write many books. So don't try to write one book and put everything in it. Really allow the one idea, the one concept to breathe. And that's why I think people really enjoy it, because it's not crazy long. It's very specific, very tactile. I mean, if anything, I've just always, as a software guy, I'm a very prescriptive person when I coach or I teach or I train. And I'm visual. So a lot of software design is visual. It's architecture design. So a lot of people go like, where do you come up with all these models? I'm like, well, that's just how we've always done. In software, there's actually a programming language called UML, Unified Modeling Language. So there's a methodology for drawing architecture drawings. So a lot of my friends are like, oh, that makes sense now because you've been doing this for 28 years. I'm like, yeah, this is, I got 6 whiteboards outside of my office because I can't talk without drawing.
yeah. No, you can tell. Again, I was saying the content in here, it's very methodical. It's very systematic, which I love. Again, I mean, theory is great. I appreciate both sides of things. I want to understand the theory, but it's like, give me something actionable. Give me a step-by-step process. So let's talk about some of these concepts for people. So you mentioned the buyback loop. That's kind of where it starts. So what is that for people that have not read your book and are not familiar with it?
Buyback loop is the process that anytime as an entrepreneur, you'll feel what I call the pain line, right? And the pain line is a moment in your business where you could grow, but you know in that growth, it's going to create massive chaos in your calendar, right? And unfortunately, most entrepreneurs have opportunities presented to them and they don't realize, but they self-sabotage their growth, right? Because there's this, you know, unspoken understanding that pushing really hard or saying yes to that sale or going on that webinar or speaking at this event is going to create a windfall of new potential customers that you just can't handle. So you do these weird things where you don't respond to an email, or you punt the speaking to somebody else, because, and you say, well, I'm busy or whatever. But the truth is you're just scared to grow. So the buyback loop states that when you feel the pain line, you do one of 3 things. The first thing is you do an audit around your calendar. I truly believe that your calendar is a reflection of your priorities. And when people tell me that my family is a priority, my health's a priority, and it's like, just show me your calendar. There's no debate. There's 2 things I look at: your bank account and your calendar. If I don't see you making investments in the thing you say is important, or your calendar has those items in there, but other things are in there, like some random call with somebody you don't even know, that a person that you don't even know introduced you to, and you just accepted it into your calendar for an hour, that's wild. So the time and energy audit is really looking at your calendar through kind of an XY axis of, what are the activities that light me up? Okay. I call these green things that, I enjoy doing, like this conversation. I love these conversations, like could do them for 8 hours in a row, feel super energized, go home to the family, have all the headspace, and it would be like the best day ever. Right. And honestly, many of my days sometimes look like that, and they're super fun. And then it's of that activity that lights you up, what are the things that make you the most money, that have the most leverage, right? It's not always directly like I get paid to do this, but the work of doing that generates opportunity and income into the future. And if you look at that through this kind of grid, that's the top right corner of like the production of where most entrepreneurs should spend their time. Things that are very unique to them, they really enjoy, and it makes them money. Everything else in the bottom left, that's like immediately like not a good use of your time, right? Then you go down to transfer. So as soon as you have that bucket of stuff that's like red, that sucks your energy and just you hate doing it, and that would cost very little to pay somebody else to do, that's after you do the time and energy audit. You then go to transfer. Now, transfer for me, because this is the problem, right? Is most people say, well, I would hire somebody, I don't have the time to train them. Well, I would hire them, but every time I hire somebody, it's easier for me to do it myself. Like I get, you name it, right? And I have this philosophy that 80% done by somebody else is 100% freaking awesome. So we just got to understand that there's no math equation that out-corrects the fact that you just can't work enough to build $1 million business or $10 million business. Like there's not enough hours in the week, right? AI is giving us huge amounts of leverage, but even with that, business is the business of people, right? I always joke with my clients, like business would be easy if it wasn't for people. Like I'm a professional psychologist. Like, you know, in my world where I'm involved in so many different companies, like it is trying to communicate. And that's why I think emotional intelligence is such a powerful thing to develop. So when we transfer, my philosophy is, and I call it the camcorder method, I record myself doing the work. So even on this desk, I have 2 cameras. Even this morning, we just launched our new website, and the feedback was me recording. So on your phone or your iPad or your laptop, you can record and you can talk. So when I'm doing my work, I record myself doing the work so that in the future, when I hire somebody to do that work, I can give them a bunch of recordings for them to watch for their onboarding. So if any person joins my team in any of my companies, your first week is essentially watching videos. And then at the end of the week, there's a test they fill out to see if they actually watch the videos. Because I want to do the work. I call it net time, no extra time. I do the work. So in the early days when I was starting this process off, my inbox, I was like, I don't want to do my email anymore. I need to hire somebody to support me with my email. Well, I just recorded myself doing my email and I created a system in it and I teach it in the book. And then when I brought in my assistant, and I've had several assistants over the years, they just watch the videos. And I've had assistants come in on day 1 and on day 5, they have full access to my inbox. I'm at a point now where, like when I say I've had several assistants, it's because they usually end up going and operating other areas of my life. Because like somebody that's that close to you operationally gets to know a lot. So I've had some lead customer success teams or, you know, but I have now a chief of staff that's going to stay in that position forever because that just makes a lot of sense. But the camcorder method is like the transfer side. And then the last step out of the 3 is the fill side. So audit, transfer, fill is the 3 steps. We audit our calendar for time and energy. We transfer it to somebody else that costs us very little, like the lowest amount of labor costs for the highest amount of time we get back. And then we fill our calendar with things that make us money. So if you're a logo designer, design more logos. If you're a coach, coach more. But everything else you want to get off your plate, especially if it's red. And then also invest in you, right? Like to me, if you want to become more, you got to be more. And your income is correlated to your investment in personal development. So most people don't even have the space in their calendar to actually invest in becoming more to be able to then charge more, right? When people read the book and they do this math equation called the buyback rate, you know, sometimes I get the comment like, well, damn, my buyback rate's like $2. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's because what you're doing is just not valuable in this world. Like there's no other answer. So then it's, well, how do you become more valuable? And that's where we got to really look at our calendar and say, where am I reading books? Where am I going to seminars? Where am I working with my coach? Where am I, you know, spending time to really upgrade my throughput, my output, and solve higher quality problems for people that value those problems? And I think that buyback loop, even today, like probably 3 times in the last 12 months, I've had to go back to it and redesign my calendar because of the amount of change in my life. And that's usually the way it works. Is like I've gotten really sensitive to it now. Even my chief of staff, Ann, she helps me with it, where she'll be like, I think we need to go through this again, go look at the last 2 weeks and figure out what's the next sequence of 3 to 4 hires, because I can already tell. Because here's the thing, Chris, most people don't realize this, but if you do things long enough, things that used to be green turn yellow, right? Like I used to love writing code 8 hours a day. Now I don't. I like to write certain types of code. I like to prototype stuff. I like to play around with different APIs, but I don't need to write code for 10 hours a day. So it's like the things that used to be green start turning yellow. You want to get them off your plate before they turn red and start zapping your energy or zapping your focus.
Yeah.
That's what the buyback loop is.
The place in that loop that I think is the sticking point for a lot of people, certainly for entrepreneurs, fledgling entrepreneurs, is the transfer part. It is the, like, auditing your calendar, I think, is something like, oh, okay, I can get into that. I can like see where I can find some time. But people that start companies, you start them as usually one person. You do everything, right? And then at some point, maybe you have a buddy or whatever. But that idea of really handing responsibilities over to people, somebody else, that's where people get stuck.
Scary.
And the arguments usually are outside of the, I've got to train this person. It's, I can't afford it. Or they're not going to do it right. They're not going to do it the way.
They're going to embarrass me. They're going to cost me my business. They're going to cost me money.
Yeah.
They're going to cost me my time because I'm going to have to review it all.
Yeah.
Here's the thing is all true. However, if you want to grow, the only path forward.
Yeah.
So it's like you can make 300 grand a year as a specialist. Okay. There are great individual lawyers, chiropractors. There's examples of like, you know, $250,000 a year, doctors, etc. But what they've done is they've just got really high paying jobs. They might masquerade as an entrepreneur, but they're not an entrepreneur. They're not what I define as an entrepreneur. They're not creating, because to create, you have to have a team. You need to collaborate. So that's why in my book, when I talk about this framework called the replacement ladder, I show the argument for why you want to start with the lowest cost, lowest potential friction, because you need to learn how to play nice working with others. Like if anybody, you know, and I put all my stuff on the internet, it's on my YouTube and stuff, especially the vlog. I have Dan Martell vlogs, which shows my life, right? And there's several videos of like how I run my life. I think if people watch that, they go, oh, geez, I didn't understand that. Like right off the bat, most people won't give themselves permission to get support. How many women or men clean their house before the cleaning lady shows up?
Like directly before, you mean?
They literally clean their house before the cleaning lady shows up. Oh my gosh. It is the most wildest thing to watch. Okay.
It's probably the one time I don't do it. I'm a very clean person, but if it's like the cleaning people are showing up tomorrow, I'm like, great, I don't have to do
the
anything.
whole point is for them to clean. So why would you pre-clean and do their work? But but again, these are all these interesting beliefs that I watch people fumble on it, or like they hire somebody to help them do stuff, like go run errands for them, and then they feel guilty asking them to do it.
Yeah.
So then they go with them. It's like, I'm like, the whole point of hiring the person is for you to get your time back. And now you're offering to go with them. And now they got a buddy and you got a buddy, but you're not doing the work you're supposed. Like, it's just these, I call it the trauma trust barrier. There's a barrier that people have a hard time letting go of that has nothing to do with the person or the situation. It has everything to do with your background and your beliefs around it. I'll give you a good example that I think a lot of people wouldn't even consider is the fear of abandonment. How does that materialize in the business? Well, I have a guy I know, okay? I wouldn't say a friend, but I know of a guy. He's got 7 people on his team that he pays, 6 figures, that do not add any value, are not high caliber people, are not trained, experienced, educated in the roles they're in the team. And he suffers in his business wondering why, when it's clear it's those 6 people that he's known for the last 15 years. And the reason why he's allowed those people to stay and he will not entertain the idea of transitioning them off his team is because he trusts them. And what I see is a person that's scared of somebody leaving them. So here he is, he's got these friends that he's known for 15 years. He controls their relationship by being the person that financially supports them. They're not performant. They cause a lot of pain in his life, but he keeps them around because it's safe. Now that has nothing to do with business, but in my perspective, everything to do with business. And that's the trauma trust barrier. And I don't talk about this in the book, but it's one of the mental models that I use to explain to my private clients, because a lot of them don't even see themselves doing this, where they're like, why am I so scared to move on from this person? Or why am I so scared to ask this for this support? Or why am I so scared to let go?
Yeah.
And it's always this part of their history that is showing up in their business. Like business is just personal problems that show up in a professional space.
Yeah. The when in an entrepreneur's journey should they start doing some of this, right?
Day one.
Day one.
I joke all the time. I'd sell every one of my supercars before I got rid of my assistant.
Wow. Like day
100%.
one have an assistant.
I would literally, if I lost it all tomorrow, bank account zeroed out, Dan's starting at zero, I'm calling as many people as I have to borrow the money to keep my assistant around. Why? Immediately having somebody like that in my life allows me to double, if not triple, my output.
Wow.
For a lot of reasons. The emotional side. When my assistant gets an email, she has no emotional attachment to that email. I would love to say I don't, but that would be a lie. When you know what I mean, Chris? Like I'm guaranteed. Yeah, totally. Like when you're in your inbox, it's like this game of like happy, sad, confused, and like it's just like emotional ping
There is some of
pong.
that.
Yeah, and for her, she's just like processing a hopper, like so what's interesting is having somebody that you
by
can.
the way, is your assistant like in person or is it virtual? Does that matter?
I've my current, so it's kind of different. There's what I would do when I would start, and there's what I do today. Okay. So today, my chief of staff is not physically in my city. She travels with me wherever I go. She has an assistant that is here, that is technically my assistant, but she doesn't report to me. Her name's Amanda. And then I have a house manager, Betty, that reports to my chief. So my chief of staff is kind of my partner in this. But again, I'm operating at a different level. So most people that are starting at zero, if they can afford to have somebody in their hometown, in person, literally sitting right next to them, that would be, I think that's a perfect situation. Like if you said, Dan, what's a 10 out of 10? Hire the person, have them sit right in front of you, and they're in your inbox. Don't let them distract you. They can make a list, and they can, maybe once or twice a day, and I teach this in my book, you guys go through it. But they're there so that you can create short form, they can hear everything, right? I've just built that infrastructure in a distributed world. So like all my calls are recorded on Zoom, and then my chief of staff watches them. Today, she uses AI to analyze them. And then that way she's got full context built for my day, even though she's physically not here. Right? Because she's dealing with legal, finance. Like my chief of staff does a lot of stuff that's not administrative. And then she has a team of people that reports to her that it's more the administrative stuff. But I'm a big fan of having the person there. Most people can't afford to start there. That's fine. Just have somebody, literally, in the book I talk about this, your inbox and your calendar.
Yeah.
Just get out of it. Just don't be the first person to respond to your initial emails. Have somebody else filter, qualify, respond, redirect, make decisions, purchase. Like right off the bat, that person, you can hire them in a part of the world where it's $5, $6, $8 an hour. And that's like a really highly competent person. And then you just start that relationship. Again, it's building the systems to be able to work with people. It's building the emotional comfort level to work with people. Like yesterday, somebody at lunch asked me, they go, a friend of theirs got frauded with some Bitcoin scam. They go, did that ever happen to you, Dan? I said, everything that's ever happened in business has happened to me. Fraud probably happens quarterly in my life. Identity theft attacks happen to me maybe once a month at this point, because I have such a big online audience. I just don't emotionally respond the way other people would, because I've learned a long time ago, it doesn't matter. And because of that, I'm able to let go and have $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 mistakes happen. But I learned a long time ago that the bigger your problems, the bigger your life. And if you can't deal with bigger problems, you're going to have a small life. So I actually taught myself how to deal with $10 problems, $100 problems, $1,000 problems, $10,000 problems, $100,000 problems, $1 million problems. That's wild. I want everybody to have $1 million problems, because you can't have them if you don't have millions of dollars.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yep. But most people don't realize that. So they're scared of that. So they lean back from it instead of saying, oh, yay, this is an opportunity for me to grow, because I'm dealing with this new area of my life where I know I got to learn to let go. And why does this upset me so much? Like I had a client once, she's like, I got my assistant and she really pissed me off. I said, what'd she do? Well, she knows I like for us to be responsive to emails. And I saw an email there and she didn't respond to it. So I went in there and I replied. And I said, well, what's your agreement with her? Was she supposed to get them all done by 5 o'clock? I said, well, what time did you go looking in the inbox? She goes, 5:30. So I said, so she didn't not do the thing you asked her. She's like, yeah, but I don't know. This is kind of dumb. And I just went in and did it for her. I said, interesting. Here's what you just did. She goes, what? I said, you just taught her it's okay for her not to be responsive, because you're going to jump in and solve problems.
Right.
You taught her how to treat you. If somebody's doing something I don't like, guess whose fault it is? That's a hard pill to swallow for entrepreneurs, but it's so true. You either trained them properly or you didn't. You either gave them a working system or you didn't. You either jumped in to solve a problem when they should have solved it themselves, and you taught them that, hey, if I just don't deal with this fire, it's going to go out, or Dan's going to deal with it. Like, you teach people how to treat you, and then you blame the person, and you get resentment and you're angry, and then you wait until there's a major issue to finally fire them. When I've discovered most people are great if you create the structure for them to be great in. That is actually the skill of an entrepreneur.
You talk about in here, so in the spirit of bringing somebody on board to be your assistant, the thing I think I liked the best out of this entire book was codifying a way to hire somebody in a very effective way to get the right person. Because this is a question, I've probably asked this question half a dozen times on this podcast and with other people. And it always centers around this idea of how you hire for character, not skill. I'm a big believer in experience. It's not to say it doesn't matter, but by and large, you're trying to hire really good people, and then you can teach them skills, right? Like I was given nod to
hire the soul, train for the role.
Yeah, great way to say it. Haven't heard that, but that's awesome, right? That exact thing. But the question is, okay, how do you do that? It's really easy to look at a resume and judge experience, go more experience, less experience. It's harder to say better character, better person than this person. Even in an interview process, you're the first person where I've seen someone who gets pretty close to that in terms of an actual process where it's like you kind of hire them before you hire them. You test things out. There's some kind of tests in there. So can you walk through that a little bit? Because
for sure,
I loved reading that. I was like, yes, finally. And it may not be perfect. You might not hit a home run every single time, but man, at least it's a system that can help you get really close to the perfect or close to perfect hire.
My favorite question people ask me, because they'll meet people on my team, you know, Sam, who's my creative director because I travel with them, or Ann, she's always there, literally anybody. And they go, oh my gosh, where did you find her? Or where did you find him? I'm like, so there's this like secret pond of really talented people. And it's like, I could tell you where it is, but you go up there and you just say, I'm looking for this. And they come out of the pond and it's this really cool thing. And they're like, I follow the process in my book.
Yeah.
Like every human in my working professional life, you talk to them, they will literally walk you through exactly what I teach in the book, because I'm not one of those people that teaches stuff that I don't follow. And if it doesn't work, I will tell everybody, but it works so well that that's how I continue to build my empire. So first off, I think it's really important to put a filter up front. And I'm a downhill mountain biker, and on the trail, when you go mountain biking at these hills,
come here. We got a downhill course here. Yeah.
Well,
on the mountain.
Ask them on the trails. Every trail builder does what's called a feature filter. So the first feature on the trail filters the caliber of rider you have to be.
Okay.
Because if not, you might end up halfway down the trail and there's a 10-foot drop that you can't do, but you're just cruising and then you're in the air.
Yeah.
So the first filter is in the recruiting process is submit a video, answer these questions. And that takes care of 98% of the noise of people that can't follow instructions, that people that can't talk to a camera, that are socially awkward, that are whatever. Like most people, you know this, as soon as the camera record, they just freeze up, right? They're not confident. They whatever it is. So they don't even know how to share a video file. I'm a software guy. If you can't figure out how to take a video and share a link with me to the video, we're going to have bigger issues than that. So right off the bat, we do the kind of hear the question, submit it, answer the video, 60 seconds. They send me a 3-minute video, archive. Like I'm very unapologetic. Will I lose some people that could have been great? Yeah, but guess what? I avoid false hiring people that I knew up front if I would have just listened to my gut. They can't follow instructions. So that's the first level. Second level is a test project. So second level is a profile assessment. So we use a technology called predictive index. You can use Colby A if you're hiring for an assistant. You can use, Myers-Briggs. It's not a yes, no. It's more of a here's more information about the candidate. Okay. So for example, predictive index gives you a cognitive score. So we can literally get a sense of their IQ and their ability to solve problems. Mm-hmm. And because I know everybody else on my team, and I know Matt's a 400 out of 450, and Optin's a 400 out of 450. When the person comes in at a 180, I go, that's not good, right?
Is this like an IQ test kind of thing?
It is, but it's more cognitive. It's less IQ, more relevant. But predictive index created it, and the whole philosophy is it allows you to essentially analyze your current team. Mm-hmm. And then match the new person to your team, and then it give you cues. So like when I'm hiring somebody, I can look and I decide to hire them after the process. I can then use that and it gives me coaching for how they like to be communicated with, as an example. So I just think the science is there. You might as well use it. So that's a big part of the recruiting process. I call it the test first hiring
just
process.
as an aside, I literally just spoke with Thomas Erickson, who wrote Surrounded by Idiots, which is all based on
Such a great book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Big fan of that book. So then the last part is the test project, because I believe that you can't work with you until I work with you, which sounds funny, but I mean, if we went from a phone call to married, that'd be wild. Yet we do that in business every day. So I'm a big fan of defining the work they're going to do. I had a friend of mine hire a marketing person to help with their like TikTok and stuff. And they hired the person, wasn't performing, upset, asked me if they should fire them. And I said, well, did you do a test project? And I was like, yeah. I was like, what was the test project? Well, I asked them to come up with a bunch of ideas for blog posts. I go, but you hired them to run your TikTok. Yeah. So why didn't you do a test project that was to create ideas? Like, it was, as soon as I said it, he goes, oh shit. I was like, well, dude, like, to me, you simulate the work. So sometimes people go, okay, well, Dan, I need to hire a director of whatever. I've never hired that before. Which should their test project be? I said, getting them to tell you what their first 90 days are going to look like. They're like, oh. I go, isn't that what they're going to do when you hire the director of operations? They're like, yeah, because I don't know what to tell them to do. Then have them analyze and tell you what their first 90 days are. And you either go, that sounds like really smart, or wow, that's really basic, or that's not very specific, or you didn't even have time. Like, people can at least make an assessment of like, that felt good or that feels not good. And the trick there, if you hire somebody that you don't know how to hire because you've never done it before, you just find somebody that you know that's good at that and have them sit in on the test project review, just for what it's worth. It's an advanced strategy, and based on those categories, and then the culture fit is a big one. So I always do final interviews, and my rule on the final interview is I'm trying to convince you not to take the job. I literally say that in the first sentence. It's like, my job today, because by the time people get to me, the team likes them, test project's good, everything's good. I'm a calibrator for culture. So I just make sure that they understand what they're getting into, and I'd rather tell them about all the warts than not, and have them find out once they join. I'd rather them just not do that to the team, because it's actually a lot more disruptive to a team to have somebody come and leave than to just never fill the spot for a few months. So that's how I said it. And I'm very unapologetic about what it looks like. I think too many people try to sell, and because they don't have a lot of candidates. They're always like, oh, well, I only have one person, and it was referred from my cousin, and I really hope she takes the job. It's like, I don't hire from a place of desperation. I hire from a place of alignment.
Dude, I love this so much. This was literally, and the thing is, we're in the middle of a key hire at our organization, and I am taking this back to the CEO. And
what I'll tell everybody because like a lot of people struggle with the assistant one, because we brought it up a few times. If people want, I actually have an internal document. Essentially, it's my internal assistant playbook. I've sanitized it because I get asked all the time. And if your audience wants it, just come find me on Instagram, follow me there, and just message me, Chris EA, executive assistant, and I'll send them the direct link to my Google Doc. Like, it's my gift. It's like, I think it's 27 pages, because what you'll see in there that I think helps people is the detail and the templates and the preference files and the North Star metrics. Like, to me, once you see that, you can use that for every other role in your company. Yeah. But it's the first one, and then you can also use it for obviously creating a job spec. But yeah, just find me on Instagram and I'll send them that.
Yeah, sweet. How are we doing on time for you? Are we?
I actually do have to wrap up.
You gotta roll.
I'm 7 minutes late. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I figured as much. So, well, there's a lot of other stuff we could get into, but luckily people can just pick up a copy of your book and get into it. The other one that I really love is this 131 thing. I just thought was so great, because it's something I run across all the time, and it's like, yes, that's a great way to address that issue, but we'll dangle that out there for people to find out on their own. But Dan, thanks so much for the time, man. I really appreciate you going over with me. Congrats on the success of the book. If you mentioned a little bit there, but if people want to find more stuff about you, what you're doing, connect with you, what are the best places to?
Yeah, my favorite's Instagram, because you'll get a sense of the behind the scenes, because I post a lot of stories there. But I also think we just passed 1.5 million on YouTube. So if people want to learn more from me, it's all free. It's all out there. My goal in life, my mission in life is to die empty. And, I keep replenishing. So I've got a lot of stuff to put out there and give. And I've been working on a new book, so maybe I'll come back someday and we'll have a chance to talk about that one. But yeah, I'm a big fan of what you do. The mental fitness stuff and just helping people get clear on the headspace is such an important area. So I love the work you're doing.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So awesome. Yeah. And I will say kind of last point here is that I love your story, dude, because I think it really is your personal story is such a inspiration for people of like, you're not locked into a path. This idea of you are something is just bullshit. Like you can, you don't have to start out doing criminal behavior and that means you're a criminal for the rest of your life. Like it's just not true. And so it's a great story, man. And like I said, I enjoyed the stuff in the book. So thanks for everything. See you later, man.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to On the X, the official podcast of the Navy SEAL Foundation and an Ironclad original series sponsored by Mechanix Wear. Learn more at NavySealFoundation.org or text On the X to 60104 to join our subscriber list. See you next time.